Welcome to Real People, Real Life, where everyday conversations lead to extraordinary insights. We're all about digging into the lives of regular people who've achieved success on their own terms. From business and entrepreneurship to fitness, politics, education, and beyond, we cover it all. This is Real People, Real Life. And now your host, Ryan Chereau.
So I've been excited about this, Paul.
It's been, when you first told me, I was pretty,
what's your thoughts? Tell me your thoughts.
I was taken back. I wasn't shocked because you get into a lot of stuff, a lot of new stuff, a lot of things that normal people wouldn't take the risk and go after. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad that you are actually, pursuing this because this is going to be a good thing if it hits and because you do the research.
When it hits, yeah. I try to eliminate those words out of my vocabulary as much as I can. The magic sauce there is no magic sauce to anything that is difficult and you want to see success. Mm-hmm. And this is some of the stuff we're going to talk about. We'll go into our history a little bit, but, really it's consistency. It's producing good content, getting interesting people. I've been doing business for 30 years. You know that. Mm-hmm. I've met hundreds of interesting people, and this was the genesis of the concept, right? Let's let other people out there see everyday people, real people, achieving success in their own life.
Right.
And too many people are subject just to the highlight reel. So we want to show them the whole movie. Mm-hmm. That's what we really want to do. So let's go back to the beginning. This is something that Paul and I have done for years. So everyone's going, well, what happened to Ryan? Why is he talking like
Talk to me. Well, that came back to the old Dave Shelley and Chainsaw
That's
days.
Right. Yeah. A little Sammy Davis.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's funny because Paul and I have had a friendship for 26 years. We'll talk about, there was a break there. It wasn't anything personal. No. Just lives went different directions for a minute. But then we got back together, and right out the gate, call him. The funny thing is we also have a business relationship. Mm-hmm. And when the phone rings, if I don't hear that Sammy from Paul, I know it's all business. Mm-hmm. It's like, hey, Ryan, okay, all joking aside, get your listening ears on. Something's going to happen here. We got a problem to solve, right? Which is what business is, solving problems. So I met you through my brother-in-law. Mm-hmm. I had started my business, this fledgling air conditioning company in San Diego, which has the nicest weather in the United States. So that wasn't a good decision.
Yeah.
70 degrees all year round. And I get a phone call. I needed to hire somebody. I think, what did I have? A couple of employees?
Well, you were still in the field. Mm-hmm. You had your office manager, mm-hmm. myself, and I think there was one other technician at the time.
I think it was BJ, maybe. No, maybe not.
I don't remember, but I know that you and I were doing the majority of the installs that summer, and it was busy.
Yeah, it was. It was really busy. I got lucky that I started the business during a housing boom in San Diego.
The East Lake boom.
Where I was living too. It was just booming. Yeah. They were building houses faster, mm-hmm. or they couldn't build houses fast enough. Mm-hmm. And so, and then there was this all of a sudden paradigm shift on San Diegans need air conditioning, which before that didn't exist.
Right.
And so I got in at the right time. So there's a little bit of luck. Okay. But luck only takes you so far.
Yeah.
So I get this call and I hire this guy. Well, first of all, what was your background in air conditioning when I reached out to you?
Well, I had started in the Navy in 92. And when I started in the Navy, I was actually a diesel mechanic. I wasn't in refrigeration and air conditioning. So the submarine dry dock I was stationed on, I actually joined the Navy to get out of San Diego and got went to Chicago to boot camp, then came back. They stationed me in San Diego at the sub base. And it wasn't even on a ship. It was on a submarine dry dock. So the only thing there that I could work on my rate was diesel engines. So they put me there. So I was there for about a year and a half. And then that basically it was going to decommission. So they go, hey, why don't you, pick another rate, whatever, do something else. We don't want you to get out of the Navy. And I said, okay, how about refrigeration and air conditioning? They're like, well, diesel mechanics don't do that. I'm like, well, that's what I want to do. They're like, well, I don't know. So this Filipino detailer, he goes, Paul, let me tell you something, man. There's no way you're going to go to air conditioning school. You're not going to have anything to do with air conditioning. I was like, well, that's what I want to do. He goes, there's no way. I said, okay. So he comes back about half hour later. He goes, Paul, I got you into air conditioning school. And I was like, I thought he said, you ship out next week. I said, all right, thanks. Appreciate it.
Was it a test?
I don't know. The Navy's funny with billets. They want you to fill certain billets at certain times. They had 2 for my rate that they were going to let in. Because normally machinist mates are the ones that actually fill that billet. So I was like, well, I knew it would take me further than a diesel mechanic outside of the Navy. And I had done air conditioning with my uncle in Oklahoma while I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a little bit of history, running ductwork, landing units, not pulling gas or anything like that, just doing all the grunt work. So that's how I got started. So I started, in the Navy doing that about midway through my, time in the Navy. And then I went to sea school, passed the tests. It was pretty intense. They kind of crammed everything, about a year and a half in about 3 or 4 months.
Mm.
So it was pretty tight. We had a lot of people fail, get out, didn't do homework, didn't study, that type of thing. So I made it through there, got on a warship, CG-62, Chancellorsville, sent me straight to the Gulf and went around the world. And, it was pretty eye-opening, going over there and working on air conditioning systems that are, cooled by seawater that's 85, 90 degrees. Big chillers, air conditioning, refrigeration systems. It was all day long. I mean, it was constant work, but I was able to learn a lot. Troubleshooting, electrical, refrigeration, how to deal with people in stressful times and situations. We're at general quarters, they got missiles pointed at us. They got all kind of crazy stuff going on. And the chillers aren't for your creature comforts. They're for the computers that are protecting the ship and the people and the fleet around you. So that chill water has to be 44 degrees or there's, bad things can happen. They got to start, shutting things down. So, I think learning under that pressure and, helped me out when I got out because really, looking at a system at a building or at a house wasn't as stressful. So I was able to kind of decompress and kind of, oh, okay, well, it's just a compressor. It's a contactor or there's no airflow or whatever. It wasn't like these people are going to die type of situation. It's like, okay, well, I can troubleshoot that. So when I got out, I didn't really do air conditioning. I was in the facility maintenance and I started working at a seaweed factory underneath the Coronado Bridge.
Civilian?
Yeah, as a contractor, CP Kelco. So I was a plant maintenance guy. So I did, piping, welding, electrical. I mean, anything that had to do with the plant. And it was a good job. It was union, contracted out. Union contract went south. And I was like, oh, man. I was like, what am I going to do now? And then that's when everything started coming around. Your brother-in-law, and actually I think your sister is the one that told my wife, hey, my brother's looking for technicians. And then they're going back and forth. And that's when I called you and you called me. You're like, hey, why don't you come out and work? I was like, okay, all right, let's try it out.
Yeah, I got the phone call from my brother-in-law. He says, hey, I got this guy. His name's Paul. He's a air conditioning refrigeration guy in the Navy. He worked on the ships. Well, I never served. I said, well, how does that translate to home air conditioning, right? I said, what kind of stuff he's worked on the biggest things. He's worked out in the desert. This guy's smart. He's hardworking. Well, I've heard that story many times. One of my frustrations at the time is the work. There was so much work, and I was interviewing people, and there was nobody qualified that I felt could meet the standard of the company, and I had very high standards, and I was getting very frustrated. I was hesitant, Paul, to hire you because you were sold as, hey, this guy goes to my church. I know this guy's my buddy and all this stuff. I said, well, if this thing goes south, this could create a problem with the family. But I hired you. And I loved your personality. I mean, we hit it off right away. We have a similar sense of humor. I did recognize very quickly you were intelligent, but more importantly, you were able to think on your feet. And I said, well, that's fantastic. You must have learned that in the Navy. I mean, being out there in the desert, being out there in war zones, you have to be able to improvise. So probably about a month into it, my wife, my practice wife at the time, she says, hey, so how's the new employee working out? And I said, not good. And she goes, not good, because she knew I had anxiety about having to let you go if I had to. And she says, what's wrong? Is he no good? I said, no, he's too good. And she says, what do you mean by that? I said, there's no way this guy's going to be around in a year. I said, he's too talented. He's doing the work of 3 people. So at the time, we were doing these things called pre-plums, where these houses were basically ready for air conditioning without the equipment.
Right.
And my crew, my standalone crew could do 1 a day. Out the gate within 2 weeks, Paul's doing 3.
Yeah, we were knocking it out.
We're knocking them out.
Yeah.
And in a 10-hour day.
And quality with no callbacks.
No, quality with no callbacks, because,
yeah.
and it's interesting, actually, you brought a lot more quality to the game than I was actually bringing, because you have an incredible attention to detail. And so I'm actually learning from the guy who had never done any kind of real run in residential. So yes, I was really excited about having you, but I just knew right away. I said, oh, here we go. This is going to suck, because I'm going to have to find somebody else who's going to be, I'm going to get used to this standard. And there's no way I'm going to find this standard. And being the absolute genius and incredible entrepreneur that I am, that did happen. So walk me through. I knew when that day came, walk me through that day.
When I decided to leave?
Yes.
Well, so I remember, because I knew that it was getting to where, the hours in the wintertime, and you were trying to keep me busy in the shop doing stuff. I'm like, man, there's only so many filters you can count in a day. I'm like, I mean, how many registers and returns do we have to put back on the shelf? I'm like, and in my head, I'm a go-getter. I got to go. I got to have something to do. I got to have a goal, set it, do it, whatever it is. So, and I just didn't see there at that time. I knew that as a company, eventually you would get there, because you had the motivation to do that. I knew that you would carry on, and I knew there was no stopping you. But for me at that time, had my son was just being born. The family just bought a house. So I got married, bought a house, had a kid, moved 3 times in 2.5, 3 years. And, as a young guy right out of the Navy, right, I'm like, there's nothing going to stop me. I'm going all the way to the top, whether it's here, somewhere else. So in my head, I'm like, I got to, start doing some other stuff. So I didn't even really get into facilities and maintenance until my wife's uncle turned me on to the local union rep, which was a local 501, which is operating engineers. So I'll never forget the phone call. I called her up and I said, hey, I'm looking at, getting into building maintenance and doing something a little bit more commercial and more benefits, maybe a little future. At the time, retirement, out of the Navy, I'm like, I ain't got no Navy retirement, so I got to think of something. And she goes, okay, come down, fill out application, do this. And I was, all right, go down there. And then that's when I got the call for the seaweed factory. And that was a local 501 spot. And I remember, and you go, you're like, what are you doing? You know, it's like,
Remember, I sat in the corner and cried for a couple hours.
I don't know if you cried. I don't know. You not in front of me. You didn't cry. I'm sure you did cry though.
It was it was stressful for me. I'm not because remember I'm fledgling in this business and I had something going good, but I also knew the writing was on the wall within a week.
Well, what was your biggest fear? I mean, you were. I mean, you're smart. You could figure it out.
Fear is so. I have a really good ability to take fear and operationalize it. But fear, it just happens to everybody, right? It's a major force that holds us back to doing almost anything. And I honestly had I had it really easy and going well. I had a guy that I can rely on, and all of a sudden, I knew when you left, I'm like, okay, now I have to go through this process. And to be honest with you, you were never replaced. That was impossible. And this is why I knew you would be leaving. We ended up probably having 2 to 3 guys to replace your abilities. And it was more than just your ability to turn wrenches. There is so much. So I always tell people in business, I've never had an air conditioner hand me a paycheck. You know, I'm not I happen to do air conditioning in business, but really what I do is relationship management. And that was just innate for you. You understood the customer. You know, you would look at a customer's house. One of the jobs I put you on that just blew my mind. This is, I think, when I went back to my practice wife and said, okay, this guy's going to be out of here. They would build these houses, put the furnaces in the attics. Then they would sheetrock them all in with a tiny little attic access. And then what we call an evaporator coil, but it's a part of the air conditioning system that has to be installed on the furnace. And so I go out to a job that Paul's on. It was the third job of the day.
It was hot.
And I get out there and I see the hole and there's not a scratch. There's nothing. And I'm like, so I pop up on the, I said, how did you get that in there? And without scratching the sheetrock up. He disassembled the whole machine and then reassembled it in the attic. Nobody would even think to do that. Every other guy would pull that thing up, rip out the sheetrock. We'd have to have a sheetrock guy come back if they weren't happy with our layman patch. And I'm just like, man, this guy's just too good.
I do that to this day. On side work I do. I still.
You can't teach that. I mean, you could teach it. Yes, you can teach it, but that just came natural. You understood your serving the customer, and you just happen to be doing that by installing air conditioning.
Well, plus at the end of the day, it saved you money. Because you didn't have to get a drywall guy. It's actually faster if you know what you're doing. 10 screws, slide it out, put it in there, put it back together.
Yeah.
Test out the coil, test out the condensate. Everything's opened up. You don't have to worry about water flowing, and you check everything in one shot. That's how you eliminate the callback. Now, does it come natural? It's just in my head, it's just a natural process of me thinking that way.
So I have an opinion on that word. I said innate, and there are things that are innate. I do believe most things are skills, though. One of the things that I don't like is somebody to look from the outside in, and athletes are the same way. And anybody who's successful, they say, well, if I was like you, it just comes easy for you.
Yeah.
Most people are insulted by that because they haven't, the person making the comment hasn't seen the hard work. So let's go back in time on Paul's life. So were you born in San Diego?
So I was actually born in Long Beach.
In Long Beach.
Navy brat. Dad was in the Navy almost 28 years. My mom worked part-time, but yeah, I was born in Long Beach, and then we moved to San Diego probably when I was about 4 or 5.
You guys moved to La Jolla, right? The nicest area of San Diego.
Palm Avenue.
Palm Avenue. So let's talk about the demographics of Palm Avenue.
Yeah, that's Latino.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
a big Latino population.
I mean, it's close to the border. We are in a border town, but it's within 2 or 3 miles of the border. So, I was, and in Long Beach, we lived in Vallejo there. That was predominantly Latino too. So I remember, kindergarten, even the kindergarten photos that I look back on, I'm the white kid. almost every elementary school I went to, when we went to Colorado for a little bit and came back. I mean, in Colorado there was about half and half, but when you get back to San Diego, it was Filipino, Black, Mexican. That's it. White kid. There's Paul. And that was pretty much all the way through middle, high school. So, I love growing up. I think it taught me, when you're someone that stands out, so you have to figure out how to get along with people real quick. Otherwise, you're going to have a difficult life, right? And I remember my mom trying to take me and put me into a different school, different high school, and, to where it wasn't so rough, I'll say. But I think in the end, it was the right place for me to be because I learned how to get along with everybody. You have to, whether it's you're sitting in. I remember sitting in high school. There was a gang member. He had a sawed-off shotgun in his bag. He had drugs in there, and it was the first day of high school. I went to Morris High School, and I'm looking in his bag, and I'm looking down, and I'm like, there's a gun in it. And then he moves it, and there's drugs in there. I'm like, oh my God. I said, what is going on? And then he's sitting in front of me, and he opens this up, and he looks back at me, and he sees it. I see what's in there, and he looks back, he goes, hey, bro, is there going to be a problem? Not here, man. Hey, what you do is whatever. And, is it, because what was I going to do?
What are you going to do?
What am I going to do? Now, most of those guys, by the time you get to your junior, senior year, are either locked up or out of school anyway, right? But, in that time, no one warns you about that kind of stuff. When you're growing up, you're like, hey, you're going to see this. This is how you need to react. And if you don't react this way, I've had gang members, just because of who I was so unsuspecting to some people, ask me to sell drugs. Hey, why don't you run some drugs? No one's going to suspect you, white boy, why don't you get over here? I'm like, oh, no. And because morally I knew it was wrong. Now, was I scared I was going to get my ass kicked? Yeah.
Did you?
Of course. No, not that time.
Not that.
Not that time. But they respected that I would, respectfully, no, I'm not really into that or whatever, and so I think growing up in that environment helped me, as I, got older, to deal with people, as I got into managing people, as I got into, dealing with other situations at work and employees and just different life situations. I was able to recall back on some of the things that happened to me, and I was able to relate to them a little bit better. I think in the end, it kind of helped me out,
You learn a lot through adversity.
Mm-hmm.
People have a natural fear, we use the word fear, but of adversity.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a great learning tool. Falling down and skinning your knee is important. You know how it feels now, so you're not as scared of it.
Mm-hmm.
In business, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of unknowns. I describe business, especially from an entrepreneur's point of view, is there's a lot of unknowns, but you have to make directional decisions. You have to take the information you have, because you don't have all the information.
Right.
And if you spend your life trying to get all the information, it's probably not going to fit into the puzzle that you're trying to build. It's a process, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's ever changing. And this is not only true in business, but it's true in any endeavor in life that you really, really pursue.
Mm-hmm.
When I met you, I noticed you had a strong fortitude, strong opinions.
Sometimes.
From the outside looking in, bullheaded, some people would say, hey, this is, but more, as I got to know you, more in your own life than pushing that on other people.
Mm-hmm.
Where did that come from? Is that something your Navy father pushed this discipline in you, or is this something that you developed that skill yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question. My dad was always, he was retired Master Chief, highest Vietnam vet, 2 Purple Hearts, a Bronze Star. He had, John McCain's dad pin his Bronze Star on him in Vietnam. So he has seen a lot of adversity. So there was no patience for that in the house. It was, you're gonna sit straight, you're gonna do the best you can. He never, beat us or anything crazy like that. But there was a certain discipline in the house. Now, he was gone a lot because, the Navy, you're out to sea, you know. So my mom was and my dad will credit my mom for actually raising my brother and I. But my mom was tough as nails. I mean, hardcore, smart lady, disciplined, very hardworking. She played softball through high school, just disciplined. She had a rough life, growing up, very difficult. So she had some adversity. So I think some of that, was kind of pushed onto my brother and I, and that's where a lot of it came from, was my mom kind of, disciplining us. My dad kind of kept us on the straight and narrow, as far as, staying out of jail. I remember, the drug talk. I remember the sex talk. I remember, all that stuff. It was pretty, don't do this, don't do this, don't, my mom was more like, this is why you don't do that. This is why you do this. Now,
Your dad was directive
pretty much
based, and your mom was situational based.
Pretty much.
Kind of gives you, that's a good balance.
Mm-hmm.
When you look back on it, positive experience.
I had great parents. Great parents. It's kind of like, my dad wasn't there a lot because of the Navy, so he missed a lot of my ball games and a lot of my band performances and things like that. But, someone has to work, and he was doing what he loved. He loved the Navy. He loved that structure. He loved that discipline. He loved that, the camaraderie with the guys and, all that stuff. So you had to have someone to do that, but they had a good balance, because my mom, she was the compassion side, right? And my brother and I, we grew up in church. We at church every Sunday, every Wednesday, playing, music in church, playing, we grew up doing that. So I think, we had a lot of great mentors in the church, so when my dad wasn't there, we had a lot of great people there. We grew up in the church where I met your brother-in-law and your sister. That was the church we grew up in. And we had a lot of older couples there that would help my mom. I remember, a bunch of people helping my mom out because, my mom was, she was alone a lot, with my dad not being there. I mean, I can only imagine, 6 to 9 months at a time, two boys, 9 to from the ages of, probably 7 to 8 to when I was 16. A lot of that time she was by herself doing everything, paying bills, groceries, discipline, getting us to school, making sure and I remember many times my mom having to go down to meetings at the school by herself. And she would take on the principal of the high school. She didn't care. No one's going to mess with her kids, just like any mom would, right? So I saw that growing up and I said, that's, as a kid, when you're growing up, you kind of look at your parents as examples to raise your kids. And there were some bad things, there's some good things, and you kind of take the good and the bad, what you can do, what you don't want to do. And then the experiences that you have as an individual, you take those experiences and then you take those and make those into your own as a parent. Mm. And then you have your own examples that you can, now, being a parent isn't always the easiest thing to do.
You didn't get the book when you had your kid?
Yeah, there is no book, period. So you have to go along with it. But as they get older, you can, you change and you move and you things. So, and my mom was real good at that. My dad was structured, and you need someone that drives that structure home. Hey, you got to be here this time. You got to pay your bills at this time. I never forget my dad, when I first got in the Navy, I didn't have a car. And I'm like, so my dad takes me down to the bank. I didn't even know what he was doing. And I go down to the bank. He says, hey, you're co-signing on this car, or I'm going to co-sign on a car for you. But the only way I'm going to do this is if you take the payment, which was $180. I'll never forget this. $180 a month out of your check and pay for this truck. It was a 1993 Ford Ranger. And I was like, okay. The best thing he ever did. never fell behind. My credit was good. I was like, man, I had a truck. It was reliable. It was a 4-cylinder. And I had it up to, even when we got married. I drove it, So, the responsibilities and the structure that he put on me was really good. And then I also had that compassion from my mom. So it was a good balance of I don't want to say good and evil, but I mean there was a time my mom would step in and nope, don't mess with my baby.
I think it's important. I think that that's lacking. We see a lot of the fallout
Mm-hmm.
of some of the youth today. There's no discipline. And it contributes to a lot of difficulty in life.
Mm-hmm.
At the time going through these things, as a child, you might, oh, I hate my mom, or I hate my dad, or you have these arguments, or I can't believe how strict they are. And then as a parent, you look back and go, damn, I'm so glad that these values were instilled in me. Combination of discipline, of structure, of the emotional support, handling difficulty immediately.
Yeah.
And these are the kind of things, these are skills that are being lost. And it's sad. But I still have hope. I'm an optimist, and I see the pendulum, swinging. I'm hopeful. I've know a lot of millennials.
Mm-hmm.
We're Gen Xers, correct? I see millennials and some Gen Zers with an amazing mindset on child rearing, on their careers, um, drive, not a lot of excuse making. When I met you, you had all of these things, this drive, this tenacity, this work ethic that I was so happy to see. I was raised with a really strong work ethic. There was never complaining. There was no excuses. I can't remember one time that you gave me, it can't be done. You just always figured it out. And I was so impressed by that and wanted to just keep duplicating that. So that came to an end. And we still kept in touch for probably a couple years, maybe two.
On and off, yeah.
On and off, yeah. I'd come out to some of your job sites if I was in the area. And then life just got in the way. And what do you think, about 10 years?
Yeah, it was
maybe?
probably about 10, 12 years, yeah.
Yeah, where we
Yeah.
didn't have any contact.
I didn't even know where you were. In fact, I was asking the guys down at the supply house, I'm like, man, have you seen Ryan? And they're like, nope. I'm like, what do you mean? And then I think when you went to work, because your number stayed the same, right?
It changed a few times.
No, because whatever. I remember the first getting back in contact with you was when you were at Johnson, I think, Johnson Controls. Or was it before that?
First time I got back in contact with you was at the Home Depot, I think.
Well, no, that was oh yeah, that's right. I saw you at the Home Depot in the parking lot.
Mm-hmm. That was
that little mini wannabe service truck thing. Yeah.
Yeah, we got destroyed. I was strictly residential business. And one of the things that I didn't understand, and another reason why you actually had left is, it's seasonal. And I was not building an off-season structure.
Right.
Okay, so in our industry, it's PMs and it's changing filters and things along those lines. So, well, I was so focused on this tidal wave of new installs that nobody's really interested in, when it's 70 degrees and comfortable and everyone's at the beach during the off season. And then the 2008 housing crisis, where everyone lost their house practically and nobody was buying air conditioners. Right. And I had no service department. 2012, this is when I went to Johnson Controls, still doing the business, myself though, out there, taking whatever calls I can, but I had to pay the bills. Right. 2012 started ramping it up. So when I met Paul, he's your when I met you, typical in shape Navy guy, but not ripped or anything, not a fitness freak.
Not at all.
Not at all. I mean, he was a healthy young man, and Fast forward, I'm driving through, we got the business going again. I'm focusing on the right things, and I'm driving through the Home Depot parking lot, and I see this bean pole, and I just look, and we both look at each other, and we do a double take. Okay, I know he looks like Paul, but this guy is just a fitness. I mean, he's in shape, he's lean, um, and I'm like, I think that's Paul. And then he looks at me and he sees this pile of lard in my little service truck.
I said to myself, I said, where is Ryan's neck? Where did his neck? I'm like, there's no way. I'm like, where did his neck go? And I had to double take, man, because
both
you had like a scruffy and your dirty, whatever goatee thing you had going. I'm like, is that Ryan? And I look on the side of the truck and I saw the dog and I'm like, oh my God, that's Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan, what's going on, dude? And then that's when I was like, okay, hey, I'm at, working at the border, the facilities. Hey, do you want to,
yeah,
are you kind of interested in getting back into the, and then that's when it resparked
it
connection.
because I had gone into commercial at that time. But the conversation was interesting. We're standing in the tool aisle, I believe. I remember what I was buying too. I was buying a tow hitch for some reason. And we're in the tool aisle, and I'm looking at him going, okay, this is Paul, but he doesn't look anything like Paul. And I'm sure he's looking at me going, well, this is Ryan, but he is a fat fucker.
I remember seeing your eyes, like you were like in your head, you were double taking. You're like, there's no way this is Paul.
Yeah.
At all. Because the last time, when you saw me, I was probably 238, probably 225, I was 6'2". So I was probably 225, 230 in that range, and just completely out of shape. Just a fat slob. Because when you work in the buildings,
that's what happens.
That's what happens.
The stereotypical maintenance guy at a building, right?
Yep. So yeah, I remember your eyes were just taken back. You're like, uh-oh. And I remember going home. I told my wife, Chantal, I'm like, hey, guess who I just saw today? And I said,
yeah, you got
Ryan.
Be honest.
No, I said, and Ryan does not look good.
I walked into a Johnstone. So 2008 business completely falls apart. A lot of businesses, especially in the air conditioning, San Diego, very difficult market, right? And 2 or 3 years pass. I got into kind of a maintenance thing, and I put on. I'm 5'11". I tell people 6 foot. But I think I got to about 235. And I'll never forget this. Now, I had been working in the industry at the time since 94, 96, but consistently. So every supply house knew who I was. I'll never forget this. So things are starting to ramp back up. I'm ready to go. I walk into Johnstone in El Cajon. The guy at the counter I've known for 12 years. And I walk right up to him, and he's, hi, can I help you? And I'm like, yo, it's me, it's Ryan. He's like, Ryan with, I'm like, Ryan Refrigeration. Yeah, Ryan. Damn, Ryan, what happened to you? You don't look anything like I remember. And it was one of many times where I'm like, oh, crap, I got to do something about this. But I was blown away by your transformation. And we ended up doing a little work together, got some work over there with the Border Patrol, and we started talking. And you started telling me your journey. And one of the things I've been excited to have you on here is to share that journey with people out there that had the mindset that I had. I've always been aggressive with business and meeting all of my goals. I have I used to call it a vision board. I've had this for forever. Well, not forever, but probably for 15 years. I've changed it to action board. I don't call it a vision board anymore. It's an action board. There are things I have to take action on. And I have been consistently hitting 90% up. 90% check-off rate on this thing every year. And the one box I have for 5-6 years in a row was weight, health. At the time, it was just weight, which then turned into high blood pressure, which then turned into this medication, then which turned into this medication. I was up to like 6 different medications And
For your blood pressure?
blood pressure. I was on 4 blood pressure medications.
Yeah.
I was on, statin. I was
Yeah.
on cholesterol's too high. You're pre-diabetic.
Mm-hmm.
And mind you, I was heavily overweight. I was overweight, but I wasn't 300 pounds. And so I was just justifying. I'm healthy.
Mm-hmm.
I look healthy, right? Oh, damn, the dryer's not working. What's wrong with the dryer? My clothes aren't fitting, they're shrinking everything. So we started talking. I said, Paul, what happened, man? Walk me through this story because this isn't who I remember, and I need to get to where you are. So share that with the audience.
So, I remember having a conversation. Well, to kind of backtrack a little bit, even before I had, started the journey of losing weight and getting in shape, right? I could tell on, my family, they love me, wife loves me, kids love me, but I could tell, it's that look, that they give you, like, we love you, but, uh, you know, you could be so much healthier. And in the back of your mind, I'm like, man, this is not what she married. This isn't fair to her. She didn't marry this, you know. And so for about a year or two, I started going through the, and, mentally, I'm like, golly, man, I gotta stop. And I thought I'd started because I'd stopped drinking soda. I stopped, and I'm like, I have to do something. Well, I remember waking up one day and my aunt, she'd been kind of nudging me along. She lives in Tucson. She's a big time biker. She bikes, road bikes. And she had been telling me, she's like, hey, like suggestions when we drive through there and see her and stuff like that. And then I'll never forget the one time we drove through there. My uncle's a photographer, professional photographer. He does great photos. He's got websites. He does all kind of crazy stuff. He travels everywhere. And he pulls out this photo of me next to Chantal and the kids. And I'm like, and it was like a bolt of lightning hit me. I'm like, and I'm looking at this photo and I'm like, and I'm looking in the mirror and I'm looking in this photo and I'm like, this is crazy. I said, what am I doing? Right. So about 3 or 4 months go by and I'm sitting there like, what the heck is going on? I'm like, I can't live this way. I can't do that. I go back through Arizona again. I'm talking to my aunt. She goes, yeah, Paul, you don't look like you used to look when you got out of the Navy. Right. And I'm kind of just sitting there and everyone's quiet, Chantal's there, the kids are there and everyone's quiet. And I was like, damn, I'm a fat ass. I'm like, and I'm inside myself. I said, I gotta change. I gotta do something to change this.
How did you feel physically at the time?
I felt terrible.
How old were you?
When I started losing weight, I was 43 and I just turned 50 this year. So my aunt, she goes, hey, I go home, she sends me a text. She's all, hey, there's a race called the Baton Death March. It's a race in New Mexico. It's on the White Sands Missile Range. I've been wanting to do this. We have about 4 or 5 months to get ready for it. Will you get ready for it? We'll do the 14.1. And I'm like, in my mind, I hadn't.
A foot race or bike race?
It was a foot trail race. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, what's 14.1? I had no idea. I wasn't, marathoning and half marathoning at 5Ks, So in my mind, I'm like, 14.1, yeah, we could do that.
That's a small number.
So I start getting ready for that. And then it was about the time my son went into boot camp and I'm starting to lose weight. And I'm seeing these pictures come back and I can see my wife, she's looking at me a little different. The kids they weren't embarrassed, but they were like, hey, here's a picture of my dad. So I'm like, okay, so
a little tough love.
It was, but you need that. So if you have that support system, it's a little bit easier. But if you don't find that spark inside your mind to make the decision to make that change, whatever it is. If you want to stop smoking, stop drinking, losing weight, if you don't have the motivation within inside you to do it, it won't get done. It will not happen no matter what you do. If you have that motivation to start, it doesn't matter how long it takes to get it done. It'll get done. So I started my journey when I was, 43, 44. I had no intention I have a triathlon tomorrow. I had no intention on doing marathons and triathlons and traveling everywhere to do these races. That wasn't in me. But once I started, I couldn't stop. Couldn't stop. And once I saw how I was able to sleep better, my blood pressure went down. I wasn't, things didn't bother me as much, There's obviously the physical benefits, right? You get into a different wardrobe. You look good. You can wear a size medium t-shirt instead of an XL, right? The wife looks at you a little different.
There's
So
a lot of benefits there.
there's a lot of benefits there. You sleep better, you think better, and that motivation keeps you going. And once you get into the routine, it's just like anything else. It's just like when you wake up to make your eggs in the morning. You wake up, you go for your run, and then you make your eggs. Or if you don't have time to do your run before breakfast, you do it at lunch, or you do it at home at night, whatever. I've done runs at 11 o'clock at night because you have to find it within yourself to get motivated. Whatever motivates you to get there, whatever it is, get to that goal. You have to have that mentality that you're not going to quit. And I've always had that. Nothing's going to stop me. Nothing's going to make me quit, for me to get to my goal. My dad installed that into me when I was real young. He says, whatever you do, son, don't quit. He goes, I don't ever want to hear, I'm not trying, I don't quit. I don't want to hear that. Put every effort into, if you fail, get up and try it again. You have to do that because, mentally, as we go through certain things that, let's say you're trying to build a birdhouse, right? And you keep nailing it and you keep nailing it. It keeps falling apart and you quit. Well, if you do it on a birdhouse, you're going to do it in life and these bigger things that happen. So when he installed that into me at a young age, I didn't know anything else. So it was just like when I was losing weight, okay, fine. Right, I lose weight. So I started running. Then I started biking. My aunt helped me get a bike. Then I started doing bike races, right? And then I'm like, okay, I'm training, everything's good. And then I started having issues with one of my big toe joint. And I was like, I needed surgery. I'm like, oh man, how am I going to run? How am I going to bike? I got to swim. So then I jump in the pool. And then I did the cardio to keep
You kept solutioning it.
Just because I knew I wouldn't let that injury or that surgery, stop me from where I wanted to be. So I kept swimming, got back on it. Now, when I got back on, my pace time was lower, but it only took a month to get back where I was. Okay, cool. And then I got back on the bike. Then I got into trail running. Then I broke my foot. And then I'm like, what is going on? Then you just figure out different ways to get there, right?
Yeah, a lot of people run it. So it's very common. People run into adversity. They run into a brick wall, and they use that as the excuse to stop. I can't because the wall's in the way. They don't look at the wall and figure out, well, I could go and buy a ladder or traverse it or get around it. It's a great excuse not to continue. There's people listening. Okay, this is great for you, Paul. You got out there and you're just natural. You just run and you love it, and of course you're going to lose the weight and get in shape. What do you tell people that say it's just too hard, and it probably wasn't hard for you?
In particular with weight loss?
Well, yeah, at the beginning. So let's step back and go, okay, so you had these 4 or 5 months to get to this 14.1 mile race. How did you do in that race?
Well, at that point, I knew it wasn't going to place. There was 22,000 people in the race. It was a huge race. Probably one of the best. It was 32 degrees when we started. It was freezing cold, right? I knew I wasn't going to place. I just wanted to finish. I just knew that whatever it took, I was going to get to that finish line, no matter what. I didn't care if my aunt, who is older than me, she's 60. I'm not even going to tell her age, but she's older than me. She was going to finish. My uncle was going to finish. I got to finish. That was the mindset.
That was the goal. Finish the race.
If I got to crawl across there, they're not going to take me across. If I got to take off my shoes because I got too many blisters, I will finish this race, right? Once you finish that race, you're like, once that goal is done, you immediately, and a lot of runners and people that do these races, they're like, you get done, you're like, I'll never do another one. 10 minutes later, you're like, you're looking on your phone, you're going, when's the next one? Okay, that's in my training schedule. Okay, and a month from now, I'll make this one, right? And then you start the next. I give myself a day to recover, get back right on it, go right back into it, get into that training schedule. So
how do you get past the? You have to have, like most people have, that doubt sometimes when the pain is climbing, your pain levels, you're fighting through a plateau, and you have to break through that. How do you get through that mentally? How do you tell Paul, shut up and just do it? I mean,
the race is easy. The race is the easy part. The hard part's the prep and the training before it.
So how do you get the motivation to do it? It's going to be hard. And this is why a lot of people fail in many aspects of their life, because it is difficult to break out of the norm. Okay, so it is difficult to achieve new plateaus.
In particular with, in my journey with fitness, I didn't want to take, because I knew what it took to get to where I'm at. I didn't want to go through that journey to get from point A to point B. It's a lot easier to stay in shape where you're at or where you want to be or get to, or even get better, right? It's a lot easier to stay there than it is to go back and work your way up to that.
It's a lot of work to go back. People don't realize.
And it's that yo-yoing back and forth, and people, they get discouraged. My aunt, I had a couple people that really kept me motivated, and you got to have people in your corner that are going to check you and say, hey, fat ass, get out. What are you doing? I didn't see your times posted. I didn't see this. What race are you doing next month? We're doing a trail race here. Let's go. Hey, I got a bike ride. Let's go. Those people will help keep you. So you got to start out with a good team. And I think for me, I have my aunt. My wife supported the time that it took, because it's time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something a lot of people don't have. So you have to reprioritize a bunch of things, right?
What are you willing to give up in order to achieve these goals?
Exactly. Something's got to give somewhere. Something. Whether it's sleep, right? Whether it's the time with your spouse. Hopefully, in what I do now with my wife is I'll take her to the park. She'll do her walks. I'll do my laps, right? Until I'll run back around a couple times till I catch up to her. But she's there in the moment with me. She's in that experience. So it's time that we have together, right? Now, on a long 12, 15-mile run on a weekend, I go out early. I take out 5 o'clock in the morning. On my bike rides, I'll take off at 5 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes that time alone, so you can reflect. I put in a lot of worship music. I'll go over the set list. I sing at the church, so I'll put in a set list. And I'll go over, just repetition, lyrics, the song. I'll listen to, I'm a big Goggins fan, so whenever I feel kind of like, not today, you get that inner, they call it the inner Goggins, right? So you draw from that. I mean, that guy, he came from, a 300-pound, Echo Lab, bug catcher to a Navy SEAL. Come on. That adversity right
there. And
he
did the SEAL training 3 times.
3 times.
Qualifying. I love the fact that you said, when I have that, oh, I don't want to do it, you reach out to one of your lifelines. It may be your family. It may be listening to a motivational guy like Goggins or another podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And that reinforces your whole premise of you've got to have a support structure. You know, surround yourself with people that are more successful than you, who have achieved success. And that's in every aspect of life, right? So you surrounded yourself with a group of people who, your aunt, your uncle, these people that weren't born runners. They made a decision, they did the hard work, and they pulled you up. And they were also there to motivate you when that loud voice in all of our heads says, nah, I don't have to do it. Oh, it's raining outside. Oh, my toe hurts. Oh, I broke my foot. So you know what? It's going to take 3 months to fix. So I can't run. Can't bike. I'm good. No, figure out a solution. Let's go swimming.
And I wasn't a swimmer. I mean, I bet, like, I would go 25 meters and stop. And then have to catch my breath before I head back across the pool. I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew that if I kept my body moving, kept the heart rate up, I knew that the impact was low, but the cardio return was high. And I'm like, let me see if I can do it. So, and then I went down and I paid for it to make sure I stayed motivated and in that lane. And it would force me. I'm like, I'm not going to pay $40 a month to go to the pool. You know,
I'm not using it.
I'm not using. Of course, I'm going to go every day.
Gyms are full of those types of membership.
You know what I mean? So I'm like, well, I mean, it's right. There's no excuse. It's a mile down from my house. I mean, there was no excuse.
You took out all the obstacles.
There was,
so the only left was in your head.
You know, and accountability, you know, like what you were saying, you know, there's not a lot of people that do, like, these races that I go to, like these triathlons in particular, there's not a lot of people that do them. So when you have to find different ways to stay motivated. So what I found is that a lot of people ask me, hey, like what you're doing right now, why are you staying motivated? What's taking you? And then people are calling me asking for advice, right? And then I'm like, well, hey, I'm like, they're using me as their accountability. So now I have to stay accountable. I can't let myself go, you know, and you know, because then you feel
can't be a hypocrite,
somewhat responsible for them, you know, taking a backseat. So what I'll do to some of my buddies, I'm like, hey, you know, fat, I've done that to you.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute.
I might get your fat ass off the couch, bro. What are you doing? I haven't seen any miles lately. I mean, you know, calories. What? I don't care about calories. Let's see, what's your distance, right? Now, you can't hurt yourself, and you don't want to get injured, and you got to do it smart. But everybody can do something. Everybody can do something.
Start with a walk, 10 minutes. Goggins, I don't know the exact distance, but I think it was something like 250 feet, and went back, got himself a milkshake and some donuts or something like that. Said, no, this ain't going to work. And anyone who hasn't heard the David Goggins story, you guys need to get out there. He's on so many podcasts. It's very inspirational. This guy is a beast. We started spending more time together on with business after the Home Depot meeting. And it was very short, where you were just giving me the business of, hey, what are you doing, Ryan? Because you knew me for many years, where I was healthy, I was in shape. I was a runner in high school. I used to be a competitive runner. And the disappointment on your face, because I do have a lot of respect for you. You have a lot of great qualities. And so then I'd go, okay, yeah, you know, Paul's right. So I go get my Apple Watch. Hey, Paul, check it out. I'm sharing with you. And then 2 months into it, you know, Paul's like, dude, you're not doing anything, Ryan. And then a year later, I show up at another job, and you got to the point where you just look at me and just give me that head shake. Dude,
bro,
what are you doing?
Exactly. But you need that.
I did need that.
You need that, because if you don't have that, then you fall back, and then you just go back and forth, and then eventually it catches up to you. You know, something's going to shut down. Our bodies aren't designed to keep, you know, that kind of weight and be, you know, unhealthy.
No, and the problem is we're so resilient when we're younger. So when you start that unhealthy journey, let's 35, I think probably definitely after 2008, when the shit hit the fan and I'm trying to put all the pieces back together. My lifestyle just went from I just don't care. Actually, it wasn't that I didn't care. I just didn't even consider my health for a couple of reasons. It wasn't really affecting me, right? I'm just moving along life. And next thing you know, I've got 60, 70, 80 pounds on my frame that shouldn't be there. And then it starts showing up in medical diagnoses, right? I start getting sleep issues. Which result in a myriad of medical issues like high blood pressure, depression.
Yep.
My health was absolutely terrible. And it then gets to a tipping point, right? I ended up getting up to 256 pounds on a 5'11" frame. That was 8 months ago.
That's a lot.
9 months ago.
That's a lot.
And this is with you, and I was yo-yoing with you. There's times you come back, I'm like, hey, Paul, I'm down 30 pounds, and you or 20. I think probably 20. I was yo-yoing about 20 pounds. Then I'd put on 30. Then I dropped 20. Then I put on, So I just kept moving up throughout the course of the year and not meeting that action goal year after year after year. But I was satisfied because I was meeting 95% of my other financial goals and spiritual goals and other different things like this, but I felt miserable. And I had a wake-up moment at Christmas last year. And
Last Christmas?
Yes, this is what happened. So we're with the grandkids, having a great time. We're at my daughter's house, and they had this little event where it's silly games we're playing, right? And it was a physical game. We hung something around our waist and we're swinging a cup and trying to catch these balls or something, right? And whoever catches the most with your team, or something like this. But you're having to jump around in this. And I think the timer was 30 seconds. I got about 10 seconds into it. I thought I was going to die, right? And I'm breathing. I can't do this. And then all my internal guts started cramping up really bad. And anyways, game ends. I go sit down. I'm completely out of breath. And then I start feeling like something's wrong. And so I tell my wife, I'm like, hey, we got to leave. And so I leave outside and she comes following me out and she looks at me and whatever she saw, she runs back into the house and gets my son-in-law, who was a paramedic.
Oh, but he's got to be a doctor.
He was a paramedic with the fire department. Now he's a captain. And he comes out. He's like, you all right, Ryan? You all right? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. He's like, you don't look fine. And my wife was really worried. And it was a look on her face I'd never seen before. And so went home, woke up the next morning, everything's fine. And then she shows me the video. And I said, who the hell is that? I'm not joking. I just looked at it and I saw somebody I did not recognize. And it changed. So I took a picture of myself, the profile picture the next day, I think it's dated the 26th. And I started simple and changed my diet and started walking 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 2 miles, 3 miles. And it's a journey. It sucked. It's hard. But what was interesting, I didn't give up, even if it was just a little bit. And I ended up, I'm down about 50 pounds. And, but that's fine. The shirts fit nicer. The dryer's not broke anymore. And I still have, some goals to meet. But what the major life change is I'm going off all these medications. I'm sleeping 8 hours a night. I'm just sleeping through the night. I was getting up 3-4 times a night to piss.
Yeah.
I'm just sleeping right through the night. I'm feeling like I can conquer the world. I felt like I did 20 years ago. I felt like I turned the clock back. And then I started studying the food. And, one of the things you said to me is, hey, listen, you can't out-exercise a bad diet. So I evaluated everything, got rid of the sodas, got rid of the sugary stuff. I'm not a big sugar guy anyways, but changed the diet completely. Met some people that were really into proper diet, really started focusing on you. So you were definitely a motivation along with a group of people. And then the look on my wife's face changed. I've interpreted that look. At first it was, well, you're just a fat ass. No, it's, I'm scared. I'm scared I'm going to lose you and I'm going to be in this world alone. And that realization, and that happened early, is I owe this. I owe this to my son. I owe this to my wife. I owe this to my close friends. My son was in the podcast. He flew in last week and he hadn't seen me for a few months. And he never said anything to me, but he said, Dad, last year, he says, I was so worried about you. He says, I just looked at you and I just figured you had 5 years left.
Damn.
And it stressed me out. And I'm like, holy crap, I'm doing this to these people. The funny thing is the rewards, Paul, aren't, there's so many. They outnumber the difficulty. But exponentially. Walk the audience, walk these people through who say, this is going to be a difficult journey. Why should I do this? What are the rewards? And what's going to keep me motivated in the future, continue to do this?
Man, some of the rewards that I didn't even realize was, just, you're out in public and you look, people look at you different. As when we're out in public and we see someone struggling to get out of their chair at the restaurant, we feel bad for them, right? That's so some of the rewards are, some of the reactions that people give you, people you didn't even know. I mean, there's people I didn't even realize, like, man, we didn't even know. Like, one guy came up to me, he goes, man, he goes, when you lost weight so drastically, he goes, we thought you had cancer. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, no, man. He goes, you don't understand. He goes, you look different. You act different, right? Because your motivation's different, right? And, chemically your mind reacts different to those reactions. So of course you sleep different, right? I remember going to the restroom and having to move my stomach out of the way to see my belt.
Yeah.
That's embarrassing.
Yeah, it had been a while since I seen my own dick.
I mean, for real. It's like, I'm like, wow, okay.
It's still there.
I'm like, this is, so there's a bunch of little things, but there's obviously the long term, it's kind of like someone's like, I'm going to die one day anyway. I'm going to eat whatever I want. True. But why do you want to go there in a Ferrari and take the rough road and hit all the speed bumps on the way there? That we're not designed to do that. And the people that are affected by that are the people that love you, right?
Correct.
The people that are there with you along this journey, why make them suffer? They don't need to suffer. They don't want to be embarrassed by, seeing you coming down here and huffing and puffing and you can't, that's not fair to them, So a lot of it, because society has, portrayed a lot of, selfish people and we have selfish tendencies. Once you get past that and realize that it's not about you and it's about the people around, you want to be there for them, especially if you're a grandparent or a parent. My granddaughter was born last year. I have a grandson coming next month. Those kind of things, like, it changes your perspective completely. If I can hold my granddaughter for 15, 20 minutes without feeling it, and before I probably wanted 2 minutes maybe, because I didn't work out at all, didn't lift at all, no cardio. I'm out there running with the grandkids. I'm out there, that's, it's taken away from them and it's taken away from me because that's experiences that I can have with them now that I'm actually in shape, right? I'm not a world-class athlete, but I made a drastic change in my life to where it's like, okay, now I notice a difference and I can see the advantages of putting in the work.
It's a major gift to your loved ones. The people closest to me, my kids, the comments aren't, "Oh man, you don't look so fat anymore. You look so good." It's, "We were so worried about you. You're such a good grandfather, but we just didn't know how long you'd be around." When my son told me, that he was so concerned, my face was so puffy and red, my blood pressure was out of control. That put a lot of stress on him. And the reward to see the look on their face that I'm on this path changes your mindset, Paul. It's a motivator I never thought would happen. Now, internally, I had to change my mindset, but externally, uh, you're looked at differently. People treat you differently.
Big time.
And that's just human nature.
Yep.
The reaction externally to people that love me is, "Thank you. We're so happy because you're a good, you offer a lot, and we're so afraid to lose that." I think that's really important to understand how important you are to other people. We've been taught to be so humble. The word is great. I think it's just so misdefined. Humble means you're just this weak, pathetic. "Oh, I'm good. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not getting anybody's way." You have to have the confidence. Humility is a combination of inner strength, defined through truth, understanding what you can provide, doing what you can to provide service. By providing service to others shows humility, and compassion, but also, like your aunt, what's going on here, dude? This has to stop.
Yeah. Don't come up with any more excuses. There's an 80-year-old guy that was running the Oklahoma City Marathon last year. 80 years old. The guy gets to mile 15 and he cramps up. He can't move. He is laying on the ground, screaming in pain. He would not get off the course. He rolled over to the curb until the cramp stopped. Right? I get up to him about the time where he's starting to roll up, and he's limping along, but he didn't quit. There was no excuse there. He got up and finished the race. There's people there that the challenge athletes. They're crippled. They're finishing these marathons on one leg, in wheelchairs, right? We're able-bodied. Thank God we have our limb. We have our physical, we can finish these activities standing up on our two legs. Some of these people can't, and they still there's no excuses on these people. The drive is there. They have found that drive, right? People that don't have that drive are making up for excuses, not only in their physical, but in anything else. I got calling sick to work. I got to do this. I can't be here for this.
It's a cascading effect, isn't it?
It just goes all the way down through your life. And if you have that mentality, it's that way in golf. You see guys throw their clubs in the pond. It's like, dude, what are you doing? You're in the second hole, bro. It's like, we got a long way to go here, man. It's just a game, So when that, like you said, when that switch is flipped, man, and you can realize that, it really, really changes not only the things you do physically, your diet, but it will transfer down, in your life spiritually. With if you have a relationship with God, it will strengthen that. It will branch out to other people. They'll see that in you, and then they'll come to you and ask, "Hey, what's different?" Then you have that opportunity to tell them, and you're not intruding on their life, right?
That's very well put, Paul, and it's so true. The benefits, as we talked earlier, are a lot of them you don't even know. You see this all the time, right? The diet advertisements and these things, and it's one focus. What's the focus? Lose the lbs, right? You can lose 25 pounds on whatever. Lose the lbs. I think that the message needs to change. It needs to be broader. Lose the LBs, yes, but this is what's going to happen. You're going to see um, benefits in your financial world. Okay. You're going to see benefits in your relationships. You're going to see benefits in your spiritual world.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see benefits in your own relationship with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
the voice that's with you 24 hours, 7 days a week. And they're not, and those are much more motivating than the LBs. The LBs is it's just the first step,
Mm-hmm.
right? You gotta start somewhere. And this is something that I've noticed is that my energy levels. I feel I have the energy levels of when I was in my 20s. My focus, my brain focus, spot on. That's helping me out in my social life. It's helping me out in my family life. It's helping me out in my business life. So the benefits are vast. And if that message can get through to people that put the excuses in their way,
Mm-hmm.
it could potentially help them break through. They got to surround themselves, correct, with a social group. How's your diet changed? So we know the exercise. You quit the sodas. What does your diet look like now? You were very correct, and I've done a lot of research on it after talking with you, but you can't out exercise a bad diet.
You
So
can't.
what does a good diet look like, and do you have to suffer through your meals?
No, so everything in moderation. I'm pretty fortunate. My wife makes everything from scratch. I don't. If we do fast food every now, like a pre-race meal for me will be in and out because I need the calories. But I don't do fast food during the week. I don't do taco shops, burritos, roll tacos, none of that mess. No donuts, none of the fattening stuff that's gonna slow down your progress. You could still eat that stuff, but you got to work 10 times as hard to overcome it. And depending on what your goal is going to be, you eat a lot of sugar when you go to train, you're going to feel it and you're not going to have the gains. So, whatever your goal is, um, you really have to adjust your diet to whatever that is. So, mine was at first, it was chicken, greens, smoothies, zero bread, zero tortillas, corn or flour. And that was just me because I knew that's what I was eating at the time, a lot of that was contributing to that, right? When I started running, I noticed that cutting those things out I would get higher gains on my miles. My pace time would go down. My recovery time would be better. So, and then I said, well, I can do this. 2 weeks of this. I mean, if I can not drink soda, I mean, everybody can deal without soda. You don't have to drink alcohol. You don't have to drink soda. You don't have to do any of that stuff. The high carb stuff. The soda is really bad because of sugars, Red Bulls, all that. Monster energy drinks. They say zero sugar, but there's a bunch of other crap in there that's not good for you either. So I kept it very basic, right? So I knew that you need the greens, and then I started supplementing a little bit. I started, turmeric and some magnesium and zinc, a real healthy one a day. Um, it's not one a day brand. It's a once daily or something like that. Fish oils, just stuff that I kind of researched and just kind of said, well, what am I lacking? And then what I did was on before my first marathon, I went and got blood work done. And, I wanted the doctor, not so much his opinion, but I wanted to know where my general blood panel was. I wanted to,
Baseline. You get a baseline.
yeah, I just wanted to know, hey, where is my cholesterol? Is my heart rate? Is this, is that, what am I looking at here? And, doctors are great for certain things, but my general practitioner, I showed up, this was after a year. I hadn't seen my doctor in about a year. And I show up and I had lost 45 pounds. Okay.
And it showed.
Whether it showed or not, on my medical, the previous visit, I was 238. I show up $175 and she didn't say one thing. Now, if I'm a doctor and my patient comes in and I lose that much in a year, you think, hey, what did you do to lose the weight? Or what's going, not one thing. I had to stop her at the end and I said, hey, look, I said, did you look at my chart? I lost like 45 pounds. I said, what? She looks down. She goes, oh, yeah. Oh, wow. She didn't, it was, boom. So then I'm like, you know what? I'm pretty much, so that's when I kind of said, you're your own advocate, right? And you can use a doctor as, tools to help you. Because you do need doctors. I do believe you need doctors, right? I had a great doctor that took care of my foot, but he was a marathon runner. He understood. He's like, hey, I'm going to fuse your joint. I said, no, you're not. He goes, yeah, we got to fuse it because you're old. I said, look, man, I said, you're not fusing my joint. I said, I'm going to keep running until I can't run no more. I said, clean it up, do what you got to do. And he looked back at me. He knew he wasn't going to get over. He says, okay, I'll fix it. Yeah. What changed that? He wanted to make sure that I gave him that confirmation that, hey, look, man, if you don't give me what I want, I'm probably going to go for another and do it, But I knew he was good.
People need to learn to challenge perceived authorities. Every profession, every profession has good and bad. So advocating for yourself is really important. We're in a society where information is readily available. There's a lot of crap out there, but if you take the time, and it's hard work.
Respect the authority.
Of course.
Respect the authority, but definitely check, because there's no one that knows your body or your situation better than you.
That's correct. And, you're seeing a doctor, let's just say once a year for a physical, the frequency of doctor visits and the frequency of time with your actual doctor is so low that you really have to be able to advocate for yourself.
Yep.
Yeah, that's critical. Let's shift the conversation a little bit. So you're talking about improvement in your overall life. Now you grew up. I tell people on the podcast that I was born on a Sunday. I grew up in a church going family. Went to Christian schools all the way up to high school.
You went to a private school?
I went to private school until 8th grade. Yeah, and then my 9th grade, high school, went to public. How has just your fitness improved your spiritual life, if at all?
Yeah, I think, spiritually, because Bible talks about how our body's a temple. God created us in likeness to his image. And if we're abusing our body and doing things to our body, as a Christian, that's not pleasing to him, that definitely had an impact to me. I remember I'm like, because growing up in churches after Sunday, there's potlucks. Everybody's, you're pies and cakes and, homemade bread.
Main motivation for a child to go to church.
Good Lord. Yeah, you're going to have food and you should eat, but everybody that walks out of the church is, so spiritually, it makes total sense. Whether it's the primary reason, it should be if God is first in your life. It's spiritually what we should be doing to take care of ourselves. If we're abusing ourselves with not just food but alcohol, drugs, that's not what God intended for our body to be. It's a temple. And if we take care of that temple that way, in my opinion, we're not honoring God and what he expects of us.
Do you feel that it is almost a spiritual testimony, your fitness journey?
Yeah, definitely. Because you can use that to touch different people that normally wouldn't listen to you. If someone's in shape and they're living a life, that isn't pleasing to God, you can use that as a way in to talk to them about God. At our church,
they're going to respect you more.
Yeah, they're
going to respect the fitness side of things,
right?
And listen to you. Say, well, we have a whole lot in common except for this one thing. Maybe he has, something worth listening to.
Our church has a couple programs, and we have a gym, and we have. You've been there. We have a gym, and we have basketball and volleyball, and we have a boot camp on the weekend. We have certain programs that plug people in to keep them active. We have a dance fit thing and some crossbox thing. Yeah, they got all kind of stuff, So your body, mind, and spirit, it has to be all together in one, body, and physically it will impact your life spiritually as well. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, out of balance.
Mhm.
You could, have a great career and then things go sideways at home, and it affects not only your home life, then your work life,
Mhm.
your spiritual life, having those things in balance. What people fail to understand, though, is that to keep it in balance requires constant energy input, or else it'll fall apart. You have to continually add hard work to it. A lot, you see marriages fall apart, or relationships, or jobs, or this and that. People fall out of the infatuation phase
Mhm.
and aren't willing to do the hard work. Hey, January 1st, I'm gonna go buy the $3,000 treadmill.
Mhm.
And then you can buy it on Craigslist for 50 bucks in March. So because they're so excited about it, but once the hard work starts, they're just not motivated to continue. I think education on the other factors rather than just losing the weight
Mhm.
may help people out there to stay motivated with these other goals, including losing the weight, seeing
Mhm.
life improvement, and other things along those lines. Within the church, you're pretty heavily active in the church?
I am, yeah. So I recently was put on the church council, and I do a lot of work down the church. I volunteer down there, using my air conditioning skills, um, and pretty much anything project management related to help the church out. Yeah, I'm pretty involved down there.
Excellent. And you
Yeah.
sing a little down there too, don't you?
Yeah, so I've been singing down there for about a year. It's funny. We have a new worship pastor, Adisa Browning, and he came, he visited at Christmas the last 2 years, or yeah, about a year and a half ago, 2 Christmases ago. And then I knew Pastor brought him in for a reason, and I'm like, man, I said, there's something about Adisa that I just can, I could just, when he started singing, I'm like, something's connecting. I didn't know what it was, and I'm like, this something's going on. And then about a month later, pastor announced that Adisa was going to be our worship pastor, and I'm like, yes, right. I'm like now, because him and his wife Bree are just amazing singers. They have a huge testimony. They're great people. And then about a month after he was there, March, April of that year, um, there was an announcement on the board on the screen, and it said, "Hey, if you're interested in joining the worship team, send a video, a quick clip video." And I'm like, "Video?" I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "Oh man!" I was like, "No," and I'm not really known as a singer, you know.
Yeah, so I was gonna say I've known you for a long time. Never
Yeah,
knew you as a singer.
yeah. I sing, sometimes here and there. Now, I like to sing, you know, in the truck or on the job, whatever,
Yeah.
Luther, Al Green, what
Give us a little
EWF,
right now.
you know what I'm saying? So I do like the soulful music. I love, all that, old school, soul music, R&B. But I saw the announcement, I'm like, and I felt God going, hey, hey, why don't you try? What you need to, and it was distinct. It wasn't, there was no question. It was like, hey, it's your time. You need to do this. I'm like, whatever. A couple weeks go by, right? Another announcement comes out. I'm like, oh, okay. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, I guess I didn't find anybody. I'm like, whatever. I'm sitting there going like,
That's somebody else's
whatever,
job.
that's your thing. But I'm already fixing the ACs,
Yeah, you're volunteering quite a bit.
I mean,
that's one thing I do know about you.
I was down on there all, so I was like, okay. I said, Lord, I said, look, I said, if you really want me to try, I wasn't expecting to get on the platform, and I wasn't expecting any of that, because I'm not a front man. I'm not, I'm not this rock, So I was like, okay. I said, Lord, if you put another announcement up there, good. I'll try. a month goes by. I'm like, I'm in the clear.
You cleared.
I cleared it, right? I'm like, woohoo, right? So we skipped a Sunday, and I'm like, okay, well, in my mind, I'm like, all right, I skipped the announcement there, so I don't have to. But okay, maybe they did show up that, and then the first announcement to come out the Sunday we came back, hey, we're still looking for worship singer. I'm like, so I was like,
well, you made a deal.
I have to now. So I was like, all right, Lord, I will put it together. So I go back, and I put about 30 seconds together, and I didn't even tell Chantal. I didn't even tell my wife because I was like, if I didn't, was it going to be embarrassing? Was it going to be, I didn't want it to be a big deal because it wasn't about me. It was truly about worship and worshiping God and leading people into worship. Because I understood that role because I played my trumpet and I played drums for, growing up in church. So I'm familiar with the space. But being up in front of people and singing and not forgetting the lyrics and being in tune and in pitch and,
and then also worshiping God at the same time.
And having to worship. I mean, it's a big task and it's a huge responsibility. I take it very serious. And that's why it took me longer to actually say, okay, Lord, if this is what you want. I sent it over to Adisa. He goes, when can you come in and sing for me and audition? And I'm like, I said, all right. I said, Lord, you know what? I said, here we go.
Were you nervous?
I was very nervous because Adisa has been singing since he could crawl probably. I mean, the guy is just an amazing talent. He went to school for it. He's in singing competitions. He's been in worship. He knows his parents, his family, his wife's families. So he's been in that space, So I'm sitting across from Adisa and I'm sitting there at his desk and he's just a normal guy, and I'm like, man, this guy is so cool. And I'm singing. He goes, let's sing the harmony to this. And I'm like, I don't even remember what song it was. I don't even know what it was. And he goes, I want you to sing the tenor part here. I'm like, and so I go, and it was about an hour of singing different
serious.
Songs. Yeah. I was like, well, I must not be that bad. And what's funny is that I'm going in the church office. Everybody knows me there as, fixing everything or whatever. And then, hey, Paul, what are you here to fix? Right? Pastor Mike goes, Paul, what are you here to fix? I'm like, I'm here to audition with Adisa. And he goes, and he looks at me, he's all, what do you mean?
That's the look I gave you when you told me.
I mean, to this day, if someone sees me up there singing, they're like, hey, I didn't even know you could sing. I'm like, well, apparently Adisa did. So,
well, God did.
God put me in that position.
Yeah, there
right?
you go.
But yeah, so when I got there, even to this day, I pinch myself being up there, to be honest with you, because it's such a huge, to me, it's such a, it's a responsibility because you never know who's in the crowd. Mm-mm. You never know who's in the congregation. You never know who needs to be touched. The first song I led, I think it was a Brandon Lake song, and it was, the guy come up to me after. He goes, look, man, he goes, I was having a rough time. This is my first time singing, leading a song. He comes up to me, he says, hey, he goes, your song really touched me. He goes, you did a really good job. He goes, I enjoyed. He goes, I don't usually go on Wednesday nights. He goes, but I decided to come tonight, and I was really touched by the song. Now, it wasn't me. It was God moving through me to him and touch him, which was what I thought was, it was more like validation. Like, okay, God, next time I better listen to what you have to say. So yeah, it's been a pretty cool journey, honestly, man. They've got me singing a bunch of different songs, and I've had to study a little bit more to learn the lyrics and phrasing, and I'm more raw, so I don't understand, that hey, there's certain ways you have to sing so you don't destroy your voice.
No, that's your personality to take it to the next level.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's just inspirational.
Mm-hmm.
I love that you've got the energy to do it. Another great thing about improving your overall life, your balance in life, it's fantastic. I'm going to take a complete left turn here because I have to talk about this because this is a huge part of your life. You have an extreme passion for this. I know very little about it, but I'm extremely interested in it when you talk about it, and I've seen it firsthand. And that is flying drones. Now, almost everyone now knows what drones are. 10 years ago, it was a new concept. I mean, they've been out for a while, but
Mm-hmm.
the popularity has gotten crazy to the point where the FAA has had to get involved. And I don't know how many people actually know this out there, but in a city like San Diego, you have to have a license to fly some of these drones.
Yeah.
That's given to you by the FAA.
Yeah, so you have to have a 107, FAA 107 license to fly a drone. And if you want to get paid, as like if you're doing a job, like a real estate job, or you're doing a filming job or something, if you're going to get paid to fly that drone, you need an FAA 107 license, commercial drone license.
So, since you were just sitting around doing nothing, you didn't, so you're running marathons, you're doing a triathlon tomorrow, and, we actually didn't go into your running schedule, but it's crazy.
It's crazy.
But you also have a full-time government job, okay? You work at the church. I'm sure there's plenty of practices not to show up on Sunday for a service. And then you have a drone technically business because it's commercial and you've made some money doing that.
Yep.
And you have all this time to do this. What was the motivation to do drones? Because this seemed to me come out of left field.
It literally was out of left field. So while I was at the border, my boss, he goes, "Hey, we've got a couple drones." And what do you mean we got a couple? I didn't know what a drone was. And he's like, "Yeah, we got these two drones." So he opens up these two suitcases, and they're full of drone parts. Because when they got the drones, these guys that were flying the drones were racing the Border Patrol ATVs, and they ended up crashing them. And so they were just parts and pieces. So I said, let me take it home. I'll figure it out. Let me see if I can put it together. Boom. Sure enough, charge him up, brought him back to work, flew him, right? Had no idea that you can't fly a drone nowhere near an airport, period. So our Border Patrol station that I'm at was right next to Brownfield. And so I'm taking off. I didn't know. There's no warnings. There's no, now there's, you have to get a license, and, you have to get your authorizations before you take off, right? So I'm flying this thing around, and I'm going around 10 feet, taking off. I'm like, man, this is pretty cool. So I go, my wife's cousin, we were at a party. He goes, "Hey, my uncle's trying to get into the drone program at Grossmont College." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Yeah, it's open to veterans, minorities. They're trying to open it up to different groups of people that can, get started in the industry." And this is like 4 or 5 years ago. And I said, "Okay." So they had a class that was on Sundays, Saturdays and Sundays. And I'm like, cool. So Skip Fredericks, I'll give a shout out to him, Hollywood Drones. He part-timed at the time, he's full-time there now as the drone instructor. So they had a basic flight class. You go out there, you fly squares in a parking lot. Then they teach you the FAA 107, right? You have 2 weeks to take the class. You take the class, you learn all the FAA, all the airspace, weather, NOTAMs, radio. I mean, you're a pilot, you know all this stuff.
Yeah, I was actually surprised when you started talking pilot to me.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, when you first started talking pilot to me, I thought you were becoming a pilot because you have to learn a lot.
Which should be cool one day.
You'll probably do it.
On the list.
Yeah, well, you'll save a lot of money in fuel because you're so light.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought you were becoming a pilot, and I didn't realize how extensive that license was to actually fly drones. But it makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got to know the surrounding. You got to know where you're at so you don't get in trouble. But there's a huge liability because you don't want to fly a drone into a helicopter, into a plane, and you definitely don't want to get into someone's, airspace and cause issues, right? So I took the test, passed it. I was real good at helping the guys. There's some people that just cannot fly. They have no business having the controller in their hand. And this was a good way of weeding out those people.
Is this because a coordination issue, not enough effort? They just are doing it because
Patience,
it's a toy.
pride.
They think it's a toy.
Pride.
Okay.
A lot of the older guys that were flying RC planes thought they could fly drones. It's a completely different animal. You have to be precise, your camera angles, and then you go into shots and flying at night and lighting, and there's a whole different arena at night. It's safety issues. You got to have safety observers. You got to have flight plans. There's certain things that you have to do. So I got involved with Skip doing that, and it was really good. So we started doing side work on the weekends, commercial jobs. We got with a developer. They had us shoot their whole profile of all their buildings. And then a announcement came out from the Chula Vista PD, drone as first responders.
They got the first program in America, didn't they?
It's
one of them?
It's one of the first programs. It's the first program in America that got basically all the FAA waivers to fly. So non-visual line of sight, nighttime, over, under. So basically what it was a software by Motorola that set up geofence for all these areas. And so we'd set up geofences on, and then we'd fly the missions. PD would call out, hey, whatever it is, domestic, car theft, or we would just do surveillance on...
First responder almost.
I mean, it was the best. The money was terrible, but
you didn't mind.
But I didn't mind because you get the commercial flights hours.
So you actually have to build time.
Yeah, you have to build time to apply for certain jobs, just like you would in a resume. Yeah. So I did that, and then I started getting into filming with Skip, and then we started winning awards. So we had two tele. You just
awards. Like to move to the top of everything you do.
Why not?
Yeah,
you
why
have
not?
to, right? I mean, so our group won the Telly Awards for that, and I was a pilot on.
What Telly Award is specific for drones?
It's a multimedia arts. It's similar to like Academy Awards, but just for the filming industry. They're called the Telly Awards, and you're nominated, and then you put your project in, and then I mean they have Hollywood producers and certain actors and people in that industry. They judge the films. So I won 2. One for cinematography and one for drone cinematography.
Wow.
So, yeah, that was a pretty big deal. And then we won the Hollywood, it was New Media Film Festival up in Hollywood. We won for one of our projects in Mission Valley for that developer. We've done some pretty, in fact, they did a shoot at Grossmont College. I wasn't able to go, but I was going to help them produce that. They did a nighttime shoot with the Drone Soccer League from Korea. And drone soccer's taken off. It's just
what is drone soccer?
Yeah. So FIDA USA is the drone soccer organization for the US, right? And Skip's involved with that. And there's a group. Man, I could just go on forever with this, but anyway, so the drone soccer started with our boot camps out in Palm Springs that we used to do for the kids in the summertime. So we'd set up the gymnasium and we'd set up obstacle courses for these kids. We'd give them a $30 drone at the end of the day and keep them motivated. And then Tim Ingram brought in a guy from Korea that did this drone soccer thing, right? And we're like, what is this drone soccer? It's a cage. It's basically a drone that's inside of a ball. Okay, like a wiffle ball. Big wiffle ball.
Okay.
And there's a goal at each side of the cage.
So it's inside the ball.
It's inside the ball. So you're flying this.
It's like the Harry Potter thing.
It's exactly.
That little ball that flies around.
It's exactly what the kids reference it as. And so you have a team of 5, and there's a 3-minute period. And the team comes in, and you can use strategy, and then you can program the drones on the brakes, bigger props, bigger motors, different proportion. The PIDs are different, right? So you can set them up different so they have more power, or they just stay there stronger, and then they wedge in, and then there's a little hoop that they fly through, and that's a goal.
How can people see this? Is it already out online? YouTube and
FIDA,
other...
Yep, FIDA USA, and then
FIDA USA.
FIDA.
Oh, I'm checking that out.
Yeah,
that sounds really cool.
It's a blast. And they had and so last night, so it's gaining traction here in the US. what's happening is that the drone soccer leagues are getting bigger. So the international league is over in Korea. So the FIDA team went over to Korea. Now, obviously, with my job, I can't travel for 2 weeks over to Korea to play drone soccer, which I would love to do. But they've got guys that fly in the team, and they do a great job. And so they go over there and do their thing. Well, Prime TV and Korea Drone Soccer League filmed a commercial to promote the Drone Soccer League that's going to be on Prime TV. So they did that last night at Grossmont College. So Skip, what he does is it's really good because he gets the students involved that he teaches at the college and gets them involved in a whole process of producing, having a set list, a shot list, where we set up, where's safety.
He works within Hollywood too.
He is a Hollywood producer, Emmy nominated.
This sounds like what a wonderful course.
It's great because he created the curriculum for this course, so you get credit for it. He's just done amazing work, in the field. He tells the story of, remember those old RC helicopters?
I do, that were death traps.
I mean,
people get killed, they were maimed.
Bad. I mean, bad.
I wanted one so bad because I love the idea of being able to fly it in a quote unquote small field, right? And then this is before internet. Mm-hmm. First of all, they were ridiculously expensive, so I couldn't afford it. But then you start hearing stories. These things had no safety.
Yeah.
With people getting killed.
Carbon fiber blades just lopping fingers off. I mean, and then the blades,
and there's no very difficult to fly, my understanding.
Very hard to fly. Very, very, very hard to fly. It takes hours and hours to try and learn how to just hover. Because people don't understand, you got the ground effect. That air is shooting back and shoving it back down. So you have to compensate for that. People don't understand, and it's the same thing with drones. That's why, these classes that he teaches are really good because it brings everything back into perspective as a safety. Because, these FPV drones, these racing drones, there's been racing drone leagues for years. FPV drones have a different perspective, right? You can follow these cars.
What's FPV?
First person view.
Got it. So you're actually flying it
right
from your controller. You're in the pilot seat.
Right. So I have a DJI FPV drone, and it's about probably about that big. It's got a 4K camera on the front, but it doesn't have a gimbal because it just goes up and down. So it's first person. So you're looking, and you're just
get motion sickness.
You can if you fly too fast. Yeah.
What would your recommendation be for anybody out there who is thinking about getting into drones? What would the first step?
Well, you do your research first online. You can, there's a bunch of different websites you can go to figure out if it's something you really want to get into. I highly recommend taking a class like Grossmont College. I taught out there for about a year. Great program. It's they have the FAA authorizations already. They've got the clearances. They've got the student pilots that are now teaching, that are really, and a lot of the students have found full-time jobs in the drone industry, doing promotion.
Is it a growing industry?
Yeah, I mean, it's, when you consider the agricultural aspect of it, there's infrared. The first responder programs are taking off because they realize how valuable those are to, the police, and, Border Patrol obviously uses them, but that's on a different tactical level, right? The police use them, firefighters use them, right? For the thermal properties of the camera.
Military, I would think, would have a great use for these, sending the drones in to check buildings out and instead of sending people in. Do you have aspirations to make this a career at some time, or is it just going to be a full-time hobby?
So my original intent, when my boss let me go to this Grossmont College, was to set up my retirement. When I retire, I'll just go do drones full-time. Why not? I mean,
there's money to be made. There's
money
industry.
Super. I mean, it's
many different avenues.
So many opportunities. Film, and it's just like anything else. It's what you put into it. Fortunately for me, I put everything into it, and it took off too fast. And I didn't want to quit my job then. So I'm like, well, I got to kind of, peel it back a little bit. So what I do is I stay connected in the industry, and then I do my own thing. I have pack drones, paacdrones.com, and then I do private, filmings and,
Do you offer training through PAAC?
Yeah.
Drones.com?
Yeah, we can do training. We can do, we can assist with flight plans. We can, set up, real estate shoots, film,
What about just questions?
whatever.
Excellent.
Yeah.
What a great resource.
Yeah.
I'm going to repeat that for everybody. It's paacdrones.com.
Yep.
Paul this is a passion of his. I love watching him work with these things, talk about them, the gear that he has. So if you guys have any questions, reach out to him real quickly and we'll finish up here. Could you just say what the first 3 or 4 critical steps if they are looking at doing drones for a living or making money doing drones? They're going to need that FAA.
If you're planning on getting paid to do that, you definitely have to have your FAA 107 license.
FAA 107.
Yes, your Part 107.
And where do they find information on that?
So you can go to FAA.gov and you go into the drone. There's a drone UAS drone section, and it will give you the steps to go through. There are programs. Sporties Online is a company that is a test prep for the FAA 107 test. I don't know exactly how many questions the test is out. When I took it, it was like 150.
Is there a practical test as well, or is it strictly a written test?
It's all on a computer.
Okay.
But you'll have charts, you'll have weather, you'll have NOTAM, you'll have everything.
So it's a regulatory test. They don't really care if you know how to fly a drone. They just need to know how to fly it safely within our airspace.
There was probably on my test, there was probably about 10 or 15 questions that were drone related. That was it. Everything else was
a pilot.
Yeah. I mean, runway 107 or runway 98.
Is there a currency requirement on that, or is it a one and done test?
So you take the test every 2 years. You have to do a continuing. It's online now, which made it easier. You don't have to go in and take the test. So you do a 40 question online, just to kind of keep your mind up to
and in
speed.
case there's any new regulations as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of responsibility having anything in the air as a pilot. I'm not a big regulation guy, but I completely back that up. When they started talking about it, I heard a lot. There was a lot of bitching, a lot of complaining. Oh, they're taking the fun out of it. And I'm thinking to myself, no, they're not.
No.
You guys need to know what the hell's going on up here, because you may be unmanned, but we're all manned up here. And, they can be small. They make big drones too, I've seen. But these things can wreak havoc on small planes. It can wreak havoc in the air. Not even collision-based havoc, but avoidance havoc, right?
Yeah.
You're flying and you see something and you try to avoid it, lose control of your aircraft. So yeah, it's critical. So that's really good advice for anyone who definitely wants to do it as a career. The industry is growing. Get out there, fly drones, and make money. That sounds like a pretty good deal.
Yeah, do it right. Do it right, because the fines are big.
Yeah, definitely do it right. Well, listen, Paul, thank you for coming out. I was excited about this. I know, Cuckoo.
Talk to me.
And I hope that, actually, I know that this is going to inspire some people out there to take a second look at their goals, their health, perhaps even their spiritual life. But overall, I can say just improving their overall life. It's possible. It's hard. Okay, so we take that out. Listen, it's going to be hard. But there's rewards in it that the person will not recognize until they actually get on that journey.
Mm-hmm.
I'm continually surprised of it. It did take me, that wow moment. Oh no. But I'm happy, and the rewards are keep coming. So thank you for coming.
Yeah, no problem.
And we'll talk to you later.
Talk to you, Cuckoo.
You've been listening to Real People, Real Life. Our passion is to have real conversations with real people who've made it. Real people who've made it, who did it on their own term. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, catch us on Twitter or X at RPRL Podcast and on YouTube at Real People Real Life Podcast.